Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. This year marks the 35th annual March on Crime campaign. This campaign allows the department to highlight updated policies and procedures, newly formed units, active crime initiatives, and future goals for HPD. It's also a time to look at how the department has evolved, expanded, and developed deeper relationships within the community. Partnerships with the Houston Citizens Police Academy Alumni Association, the Positive Interaction Program, Police and Clergy Alliance, the Rings Neighborhood app, and Nextdoor.com are all key elements that assist law enforcement to enhance public safety. And we would also like to give a special shout out to our patrol divisions that will implement various crime initiatives with local businesses, schools, and community groups that will continue way past the month of March. Before we have our special proclamation and remarks from our chief, we'd like to recognize several dignitaries that have joined us today. Councilmember Carlos Cisneros, Councilmember Mike Knox, and former HPD officer, and Councilmember Jack Christie. Thank you all three for being with us today. And now it is my pleasure to have come up Ellen Cohen, Mayor Pro Tem and Councilwoman, to present a special proclamation to Chief Acevedo.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm thrilled to be joined by my colleagues. Thank you very much. Chief, if you'll join me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. This proclamation is to recognize the March on Crime, Lucha contra el Crimen. Close?
Crimen. Very
Crimen.
close, very close.
Close, okay. The March on Crime program was created in December 1984 by Mr. Don Rosette out of the growing concern over violent crimes being committed in the black community. The campaign's first year achieved much success, and a similar program for the Hispanic community, Lucha contra el Crimen,
Very good.
thank you, began in September 1986. The programs were combined in 1991 and open to all citizens of Houston. March on Crime, Lucha contra el Crimen, is designed to disseminate crime prevention information through both electronic and printed media, as well as teaching those within the community new strategies to reduce crime in the neighborhoods. In 2019, March on Crime, Lucha contra el Crimen, continues to focus on the education of the public on crime and crime prevention in their community, and reinforced the Keep Houston Safe public safety campaign. Officers throughout Houston reach out to local businesses, schools, and communities to continue crime prevention and the implementation of crime prevention efforts aimed at the elimination of criminal incidents. The City of Houston commends March on Crime, La Lucha contra el Crimen, for its tireless work throughout local communities to inform citizens about crime prevention and its effort to reduce criminal activity. Therefore, I, Ellen Cohen, Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Houston, on behalf of Sylvester Turner, Mayor of the City of Houston, hereby proclaim March 2019 as March on Crime, Lucha contra el Crimen Month in Houston, Texas. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you.
Here we go. Should we go in the front? Should we go to the side for right over here? Did you get it? Oh, right here. They want over here. Here we go. Oh, that's not. There we go. All right, thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, council members, for being here. On behalf of all of us of the Houston Police Department, and most especially the community we serve, we wanted to say thank you for always being supportive, for always standing with us, and quite frankly, for having the backs of the men and women in blue and the community that we serve. It's a really good morning when you start off a week with all of our heroes over here to talk about, what are we going to do in 2019? What is our focus this year? And obviously, like I said, from day one, our focus will always be just combating violent crime, because in a city with limited resources, in the police department where we're understaffed, under-equipped, and under-budgeted because of a myriad of issues and challenges we have as a city, we make a difference each and every day, not excuses. And I'm so really proud to be standing here with all of you. The March on Crime, Lucha contra el Crimen, began in 1984 when leaders in the African-American communities came together and partnered with the Houston Police Department to help address the rising crime rates. The program was so successful that 2 years later, it expanded into Latino communities, and then in 1991 became a citywide program. The program is really based on the premise that no one group, no one entity, no one neighborhood can do it alone. It really takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to keep a community safe. And so we're proud to stand here because we are recognized in the city of Houston, one of the nation's fastest growing cities, fourth largest city, soon to be third largest city, that it takes everyone, neighbor helping neighbor, church helping church, officer helping everyone to make a difference. So this year, what we really want to focus on is continuing to build on the successes of past years, which means trying to continue to reduce violent crime. Mayor Turner, one of his highest priorities is obviously the safety and security of our community. And our number one priority this year, or one of the big highest priorities, is really continue to combat the gang and gun violence and the violent crime that comes from gun violence. We're going to do this in a multitude of ways. First and foremost, I'm proud to say that our police department is really committed to relational policing, that we understand that community policing, too many police departments say, well, we don't have enough resources, right? And chiefs don't understand that resources is not about heart. Resources is just that. So we really talk about relational policing, and this year we want to continue to build upon those tenets of relational policing. It's a mutual responsibility between the law enforcement and the community and law enforcement and neighborhoods and neighbors and friends, and everyone's responsibility. But for us, it's an additional duty. And that's really to continue to try to be transparent as much as possible, understanding that there are laws and rules of conduct that impact how much we can share, but when at all possible, we will be transparent with the community that we serve and with each other. We're going to be a department that continues to be respectful of the community, and I think neighbors need to be respectful of one another. We're going to continue to engage this community like we always have, like we always do, and I think we do a phenomenal job of on a daily basis engage our community, whether it's in programs throughout the city, through our patrol efforts, through our investigative efforts, through our Police Activities League efforts, through our media efforts, through our social media efforts. We're going to continue to engage, and hopefully as we engage people in a transparent and respectful manner, we end up building emotional capital. As we know that right now we are drawing on that emotional capital that we've done such a phenomenal job of doing and continue to do on a daily basis, from Harvey and or the way that we investigate crime and bring justice to victims and suspects to justice. And then we're going to hold each other accountable, and then hopefully that'll end up on the back end building trust. So it's all about right? Transparency, respect, engagement, emotional capital, accountability, and building trust. So we're going to continue to work on the peace efforts with the gangs. In the upcoming several weeks, you will be seeing us with our community partners, the community groups that are out there in the trenches, actually building relationships and trying to build trust. We'll be bringing them in to actually look at how we move forward, how we wrap our arms around people that are in the gang lifestyle to really offer them an alternative to that kind of life. And I really believe that through those efforts, we're going to get a real return for our bang. We're going to focus on our community-based programs, whether it's our youth programs, our education programs, our job programs, all the programs that go into combating violent crime and the gang culture. And then we're also going to work closely, as you all know, the Mayor's Commission on gun violence, combating gun violence. It's just the report went out just last week, I believe. We put it out to look at legislative approaches to try to make gun violence a little bit more difficult for crooks and people that would do harm to our community to get their hands on guns. The second thing that we really have to focus on this year is domestic violence. We know that last year, domestic violence was one of the key drivers in our homicide rate. We saw a 38% increase in domestic violence related murders, and those are the ones we can actually make the connection. You know, I'm pretty confident, fairly confident there's probably even more, but we're really going to work on our domestic violence initiatives to try to reduce it, and most importantly, try to bring comfort and the safety with our private sector partners in the Houston area Women's Shelter Center, and really working together to create safe spaces for victims to come forward and to put them in a place where they'll be safe and to get them the resources they need to get out of violent situations. One of the things that we'll be working on this year's when we go to a house in the middle of the night or during the day or any day of the week, and regardless of the time of the day of the week, we see that a family has been victimized, is being brutalized by an abusive member of that household, we want to move very quickly to get that arrest warrant, quickly get that person in custody, and quickly restore the peace for that household. And that's something that we are working on our processes, because one of the things that we've noticed last year is that that's probably the one hole we had, is when the offender, when the suspect is gone, when patrol gets there, that we're probably not as quick as we should be, could be, must be, to save lives. And part of that is really creating an environment where we will be able to turn these victims into survivors. And that's not just victims of violent crime, but victims of domestic abuse, but victims of violent crime. I'm really happy to announce today that this morning, as I was walking in, I see a small group of people in civilian clothes, and I didn't recognize them, so I'm a nosy chief, as you all know. And I said, "Who are you all?" And I'm happy to announce that as of this morning, we have 8 additional victim services counselors that are starting today at the Houston Police Department. One of the priorities that I set when I got here 2 years ago, and I took a look at our victim services, is we did not have enough folks. And thanks to grant funding from, I believe it was through the governor's office, I'm not sure where it came from, but the bottom line is either governor's office or DC. The bottom line is, as of this morning, we have 8 additional victim services counselors, and as of, I believe, tomorrow, we will now have Dr. William Petty, who's been in the field for many, many years, come on board, who will help coordinate and lead those efforts. And our continued hope is that these victim services positions will eventually, the funding will continue, but we'll continue to grow that service, because at the end of the day, we want to take these victims and turn them into survivors. And Mayor Pro Tem knows this work because of her previous work with the Women's Center here in Houston. And as part of combating our violent crime initiatives, one of the things that the major city chiefs and this chief and Texas chiefs are working on is that currently about 500,000 fugitives are not in the NICS system. A lot of people don't know that you can be on you can be placed on a no-fly list in this country and not get to fly because pre-conviction of any crime. Yet, if we go to a home today and we see a woman or a family that's been victimized, and we get an arrest warrant on felony charges for someone, we have no way to stop that someone as we stand here today from going to a licensed gun dealer and purchasing a firearm. And that's a problem. And regardless of what people think, common sense and good judgment tells me that, at least on a temporary basis, when you have a felony warrant, especially for a violent crime like domestic violence, you should not be allowed to go buy a gun. So you can turn around, come back, and murder your family, which we've seen far too often. So we'll be continuing to work with our federal partners and the legislators, our delegation here, to try to change that and try to get fugitives into the NICS system again like it had been years past. The other area that we're going to be really focusing on is the bond issue as it relates to people that pose a threat to this community. I actually met with the administrative judge of the criminal courts here last week. We met with them, and she's very supportive of having a risk-based approach to setting bonds. Unfortunately, what we continue to see is too many judges in these courtrooms are letting people that present a clear and present danger to the community that we serve, and the officers have to arrest them, by giving people either PR bonds or extremely low bonds that are absolutely violent. And that's a problem, to the extent that we had one group of one case where we had some suspects that were actually out committing a series of aggravated robberies at the Michoacana meat markets. Our officers did the courageous thing, the right thing, the expeditious thing, brought these people into custody, and next thing you know, they're out on a PR bond. And so when I met with the judge, I'm very happy that she's giving me the opportunity to go meet with the rest of the criminal court judges, district court judges next month. But our message is going to be really clear. Look, we have to shed light into what's happening in the bonding, with bonds in this state and in this county, where we have people like the suspect that killed Trooper Allen on Thanksgiving a little over a year ago. Trooper Allen was murdered, brutally murdered by an individual who was out on a very low bond after severely beating a deputy from a county sheriff's department, and that's a problem. So we will be working on that bond issue, and we will be reporting back and actually starting to shed some light. We cannot have our officers putting their lives at risk to keep this community safe, catching these violent criminals, and letting the court let them come in one door and out the other door in either a PR bond or a low bond. And it should be very troubling to the people of Harris County when we're arresting these people, and you all see them in the news, and they get this here, then they go commit an offense somewhere else, like the ATM robbery crew that we let out on either low or no bond, a PR bond, and then they ended up getting arrested in Corpus Christi, is my recollection, where they showed what it's supposed to be like when people are a threat, and they got extremely high bond, which is the way it should be. So we will be shedding a light on that. Then the last area that we really want to focus on is an area that does not discriminate. It doesn't care death when it comes in this area, doesn't care if you're rich or poor, doesn't care if you live north, south, east, or west, doesn't care if you're black or white, Jewish, Muslim, doesn't care if you're atheist, doesn't care if you're Christian. And that is traffic fatalities. So we will continue to work very diligently to reduce the loss of life in our community at the hands of drivers. We know that the majority, very vast majority of those crashes have nothing to do with mechanical failure. It has to do with either driver error or driver judgment or driving under the influence. We are the worst county, the worst city in the worst county in the worst state for drunk driving injuries and fatalities. And I'm glad to say, happy to say, I talked to Commander Campbell of our Highway Enforcement Group, our Traffic Enforcement Division this morning on our Monday morning conference call, and I wanted to tell him and congratulate him on the tremendous work they are doing with the help of our patrol officers and continuing to affect a reduction in the number of fatalities in our community. For the first 2 years we've been here as a team that Mayor Turner brought us here, and we placed an emphasis on traffic enforcement. We've seen fatalities drop double digits 2 years in a row, and year to date this year we are down again from at this time in 2018 we had 40 fatalities. This year we're down, it's gone from 40 to 30 fatalities year to date, and that's a win, because death is very final. It doesn't matter how you die. You don't get a second chance at life, and we are looking forward to continuing our partnership with Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, who's through his leadership brought together a collaborative effort where we're going to work county-wide to impact DWI and traffic fatalities. And I want to commend Sheriff Gonzalez for taking that initiative, and we're really proud to join with him and the constables and DPS and everyone else to combat the scourge of traffic fatalities. And through the leadership of Commander Campbell and his team, we're actually using traffic enforcement with a double-edged sword to patrol some of our high crime areas where we know we're having a challenge, and we're utilizing traffic enforcement as a tactic and a strategy to combat violent crime through our criminal apprehension program, criminal interdiction program that's really tied to traffic enforcement. With that, that's a high-level review of what we're going to be working on. And again, I want to just tell the mayor and the council members, you all don't get to pick the hand that's dealt you when it comes to our budget, but I want to tell you that we really appreciate your leadership, your support. We appreciate you being a hard-working council, and I've got a point of reference. This is I've worked for the state with the Highway Patrol. I've worked in Austin. I've worked here, and I've never seen a harder working group of elected officials as we have here in Houston. I just want to say again, from all of us, thank you for being full partners, not
you.
just in words, but in deed. We really appreciate you, and thanks for being here. So with that, we'll open it up to questions.
Si nos puede comentar, por favor, en español, lo que significa el reducir el crimen en Houston, especialmente si hay una persona que tiene una orden de arresto y puede comprar un arma.
Bueno, tenemos, para empezar, estoy muy orgulloso con los esfuerzos de nuestro departamento y los esfuerzos que hacemos con nuestra comunidad para combatir el crimen. Esta es una iniciativa que lleva muchos años aquí, pero este año una de las cosas que queremos hacer es continuar a combatir el crimen violento. Y desgraciadamente una de las áreas que la violencia doméstica en la casa es un problema muy serio en nuestra comunidad. El año pasado los homicidios sobre esta clase de casos subieron por 38% y fueron como 20% de los homicidios en esta comunidad. Este año queremos continuar a combatir ese problema, y una de las cosas que sabemos que una persona que tiene orden de arresto, la ley hoy permite que esa persona con orden de arresto puede ir a un negocio que vende armas de fuego y comprar una arma de fuego. Así que este año, con el liderazgo del alcalde Turner y su comisión contra el crimen y la violencia de armas de fuego, vamos a tratar de cambiar la ley para que una persona que tiene orden de arresto no pueda comprar un arma de fuego, y ese va a ser una de nuestras iniciativas este año.
Los padres de familia, el caso del homicidio el jueves, de que un francotirador desde el techo está disparando. El sospechoso 18 años, ¿qué le puede decir a los padres referente a que sus hijos no entren en el crimen?
Mire, es importante saber que sabemos que los papás tienen que prestar atención a qué está pasando con sus hijos. ¿Quién son sus amigos? ¿Quién son sus amistades? ¿Con quién andan? Si andan con pandilleros, no lo permite. También tienen que prestar atención si tiene armas de fuego sus hijos, sus hijas. Pero ese caso, esa noche, cuando estuve ahí con mis oficiales, le prometimos a ustedes que íbamos a encontrar a ese sospechoso, y gracias a Dios, en 2 días tomamos unos sospechosos. Yo sé que hay más testigos y otro sospechoso. Acuérdese que si usted está involucrado en este crimen, en esa desgracia, vaya a una estación y bríndese, porque no lo vamos a dejar andar suelto en la calle, lo vamos a llevar a la justicia. Did you have anything in Spanish?
Sí, respecto a ese caso, en un inicio se hablaba que eso podría estar vinculado a pandillas, y usted está mencionando que hay demasiado problema con las pandillas y con violencia doméstica. ¿Cómo poder hacer frente a algo que es un problema que viene de casa? ¿Cómo pueden ustedes...
Bueno, mira, acuérdese que especialmente para la comunidad que es inmigratoria, hay mucho temor sobre si soy víctima, si llamo a la policía, se me van a deportar. Acuérdese que si usted es la víctima de un crimen, no tenga temor, porque para decirle la verdad, si es víctima y hay una investigación, nosotros podemos buscarle un U-Visa, un T-Visa, que es una visa que puede protegerla sobre que no lo pueden deportar, y eso es algo que tenemos aquí que podemos usar. Así que lo más importante es que si no reportan el crimen, no lo podemos buscar ayuda. Let me just say real quickly about domestic violence. And one of the things that I believe that sometimes young people turn to a life of crime or turn to the gang culture. There a lot of these kids, a lot of these suspects, when you really deep dig into their own upbringing, their own life experience, they come from broken homes, they come from abusive homes. So I really believe by us trying to create safe spaces for families, get abusers out of the home and into jail or into services that will change the behavior, I really believe that in the short term we're saving lives, restoring peace in homes, but in the long term we're really going to impact overall violent crime in our city, because young people will make hopefully better choices when they're in a healthy home environment. What else? Yes.
Chief, I'd like to ask you a quick question, too, about the Harding Street raid. DA Ogg said she is reviewing the case agent's past cases. We have as well, and we reported that over 7 years of his cases, in more than 100 search warrants where he requested a no-knock warrant from a judge because an informant, he said, observed a gun inside the home.
Mm-hmm.
This officer, in more than 100 cases, never listed a gun recovered from the home.
Yeah, well, like
give you cause for concern?
Well, okay, I don't need any more cause for concern. We have a lot of concerns over everything surrounding that. I've said before, I'm not going to talk about that case anymore, but I will just say this, because even in this case, people look at the return. Just because a gun isn't listed in one area doesn't mean that one wasn't found or one wasn't listed somewhere else. So don't draw any final conclusions until you look at the repository where that information can be. One. Two, I've made it really clear, we're not going to talk about this case anymore. So as much as I'd love to talk about the case, we're just not going to talk about it anymore. When it's all done, when we're all done with our several pieces of this case, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on it.
Can you answer a procedural question? When a controlled buy is done, is it this department's policy to have a second officer witnessing the before and after interactions with that confidential informant?
Yes. And that's all, and I'm not going to talk about that case anymore, but yes. Anything else?
Why the need to have a second officer?
Because that's the way we do business.
They're going to be looking at, we've been hearing that one of the cases, Goins was not actually the one who got the warrant, but he was actually doing surveillance. Are you going to be looking broader at the narcotics?
We are looking, listen, folks, we are reviewing, we have a lot of reviews ongoing, and which includes what happened leading up to that raid, which includes before Kim Og even announced anything, our officers' activities, and which includes a broader dive into the narcotics division, our policies, procedures, systems, and to see if there's any other flags out there that we need to look at. I've already announced that before, but I'm not going to talk anymore about that. That's it. I'm not going to answer a single other question about anything related to that case. Anything else?
Yeah, he was asking about the ambush shooting.
If you can ask it in Spanish, I'll answer it in English. No, I'm just kidding. Eh? Oh, Lord. If there... Yeah. Councilmember Knox is ready to go to the rodeo. Hurry it up there, pal. I'm sorry, what?
He's 18 years old, he had an AR-15, he can't buy it. Where did it come from?
Well, that's part of the investigation, So, it's interesting because, again, everybody, when you talk about firearms in this country, everybody goes into their corners and they dig in instead of being pragmatic and realizing how can we accomplish greater safety for the American people while respecting the Second Amendment. And there's a way to get there. And the truth of the matter is when people, even some of my own officers, when they hear me talk about these things, they block out anything that you're saying. They think we're talking about going and taking away guns. And so I just hope that, again, as we talk about these issues, we talk with each other, we come together, we look at what we can do to protect the Second Amendment by doing a better job of keeping firearms in the right hands. And then what can we do to ensure that we're actually listening to one another instead of just blocking it out, tuning it out, and nothing ever happens. When you go to that scene, I had just left the officer-involved shooting on one side of town, on the west side of town. They go to the northeast side of town to find out about 4 shot people after some gunman gets up on a rooftop and just opens up, and the neighborhood saying this is not what happens here. Well, it can happen anywhere. That's the sad thing about what's going on in our country. It can happen anywhere. It does happen just about everywhere. There is no safe place anywhere, including airports, where we've had active shooters at airports. So, we just need to do a better job. And so I would just urge people to listen to what people are talking about in terms of policy decisions instead of just going to the one extreme, let's take everybody's gun away, and the other extremes, la-di-da-di, everybody should have guns regardless of their character, regardless of whether they're responsible enough, and regardless of not they're eligible with that. So again, thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate you. Have a great week. Thank you.
Good job. Don't forget your glasses.
No, I won't hold it. Great to see you.
I gotta get
Any questions for us?
Say what? No, I think your hands are good.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, council members. Councilmember Knox, Councilmember Knox, can we get a group shot? Can we get a group shot with this? So let's do it outside so we can read it. Can you?
Be out there later this afternoon.
Let's get a quick group shot.